Ridiculous nickname. Like one of the biggest AO nicknames in the history of basketball. And it was actually on his basketball reference. If you look up Josh Giddey, it's a slob wizard. Crazy. But he is one of the best in the game at that sideline out of bounds. He is a slob wizard. Welcome back to the Kenny Beecham podcast. Today I decided that I want to shed some light on some of the small markets and medium-sized markets across the association, and we'll get into that in a second. I want to remind you to leave a like on the episode, subscribe to the channel if you're here on YouTube, tell a friend to tell a friend. If they're looking for NBA content, a podcast worth watching, a podcast worth listening to, the Kenny Beecham podcast might be for them. I mean, I don't know, but at least get their foot in the door and then let them decide. You feel me? Go to Spotify, go to Apple, and leave 5 stars. We're on the quest to become the #1 basketball podcast in America. I have not looked at the charts recently, but I'm just going to assume we didn't hit #1. I feel like if we did hit #1, the comment section / my Twitter mentions will be going crazy. And I haven't seen that just yet. So we want to continue to do that. And I can't do that without you showing your love. So I want to say I appreciate you. So the Kenny Beecham podcast has been around for a few months now, and I've been trying to decide exactly what I want my voice to be or how I want to use this platform. You know, I put my foot in the water a little bit, dropping the Not an NBA podcast. Y'all seem to love it. We was like, okay, let's really go completely into this. One thing that actually is surprising me though, every single episode I'm seeing comments like, I cannot believe Kenny is on episode whatever. I thought the show would have been over by now. I know my track record, all right? I'm not getting away from it. I know that I have a tendency of starting projects and dropping them once I get bored. Not this one. So I'm just still trying to figure out all of the things. You know, I'm taking the opportunity to do these episodes, rewatch, re-listen to, and be like, oh, that don't work. Maybe we should add this. So I'm still growing as a person, right? I'm still growing as a podcaster. But one of the things I desperately didn't want to happen with this platform, with this show, is for us to be a show that strictly talked about the mainstream topics and things across the association. Now, granted, I'm gonna be honest, I'm a peek behind the door. Part of my job as the creator here is to put together content that people will watch. And when you talk about the Rudy Gobert fight with Draymond Green, ladies and gentlemen, people want to hear that opinion. But I also don't want that to be the entire show. I don't want to just talk about the same things that everybody else is talking about. So today we're experimenting a little bit, shedding some light on some smaller market teams, because those, I'll be honest with you, those are the teams I feel like I'm enjoying watching the most this season, for better or for worse, because some of the teams we're talking about aren't on a hot streak. It's the exact opposite. So I'm not saying the mainstream topics go away, because it's inevitable that we will talk about crazy stuff as it happens, but I also want to take time to showcase my love for the things that maybe the NBA sicko is the only one privy to. You feel me? So I want to start off talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. Is this a mainstream topic? I don't really know. But according to the Googles, because I had to Google what teams classify as a big market, and they broke it up into big, medium, and small market. And OKC was like the 27th ranked market in the association. So we're starting off with a small market team. As I'm recording this, they are 9-4. They were in the first quarter of a game versus the Portland Trail Blazers. So I'm going to assume that by the time this episode is released, they are a 10-4 team, and they look very, very good. If you go rewatch my preseason prediction episode or whatever, the OKC Thunder were one of those teams that I said they had one of the largest ranges in ball. And apparently I was wrong. There is no range. This team is really, really good. Like, I just didn't know what to believe in, because I didn't want to just say that, oh, because Josh Giddey has another year, he's going to be better. Because J-Dub has another year, he'll be better. And I didn't know what to expect and check completely. So I thought this could be a team that was a play-in team, or could be as high as like the 3 seed. And right now they're closer to the 3 seed than the play-in. A lot of basketball left to be played, but there are a lot of things when I watch this team that I feel as though it's real. And I just want to showcase some of the love, because the other day, yesterday, we had Friendsgiving at my house. We do it every single year, except for the 2 COVID years. We've done it every year. All the guys get together with significant others. We have good dinners, good eats, some basketball. And boy, when you have a house full of people that all love the game of basketball, there's nothing like it. It's nothing like it. So we're watching the ending of OKC versus Warriors, because I would be lying to you and said that all of us were locked into the TV from the beginning to the end, right? But the fourth quarter came around. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Let's really watch. And the OKC Thunder showed a lot of poise and a lot of great things in that game. As of right now, again, this is not counting for their game against the Portland Trail Blazers. They are one of the few teams in the association that have a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense. They're in the company of the Boston Celtics, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Denver Nuggets, New York Knicks, and then it's the OKC Thunder. Those are the 5 teams. Now, last year, they were a great defensive team, and that was without any real center play. No disrespect to Jalen Williams, not J-Dub, but Jalen Williams. But I think a lot of us recognize that that guy was not a starter quality center in the association, and they were a good defense then, and now they added Chet. And boy, Chet has been as dominant as anybody could have expected. In that Warriors game, it was his breakout game, right? He ended up with 36 points. He hit the turnaround three-point shot, a shot that 7-footers should not be able to take or make to force overtime. And his dominance goes, it's like counted stats-wise, 17 points per game, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks. Again, this is not accounting for his Trailblazer game. 55% from the field, 44% from 3. And I want to say, if you watch this team play, you look at the 2.2 blocks, you're like, oh, that's really, really good. That doesn't tell the story of what Chet is doing on the defensive side of the ball. That does not even, I think he even went onto Twitter after winning the game recently, was like, y'all got to relook at the stats because there's no way I only had X amount of blocks. But he is impacting defense way on a way higher level than most rookies are able to. And I know that brings up the conversations about Chet versus Wemby. They played against each other last week and it was a snooze fest, but both of these guys are just great in their own rights. I don't want to get to the comparison things, but on the defensive side of the ball, both of these dudes are doing amazing things. Even Wemby yesterday had 8 blocks. I won't lie and tell you, I watched the game, but I saw that he had 8 blocks. But Chet is doing things that I definitely did not expect him to be able to do this early in his career. Now, it's not without his mishaps, right? In this game where he was so very dominant against the Warriors, he had 2 plays very late in the game that almost cost him the play. And that's not even accounted for the lack of rebounding on the last play where Kevon Looney kicked it out to Wiggs. Shout out to Wiggs for having his first real good game. Same thing with Klay Thompson. Came in the L, but, you know, right track for them. It wasn't without his mishaps. He had those two plays, and then he was able to hit that shot. And again, I'm assuming that everybody's watching this has at least seen the shot. It was one of those shots, and I heard I saw somebody say this on Twitter, and I cannot agree more. It's one of the shots that you will see at the end of his career in his highlight mixtape. Because going to hit that shot to go into overtime against a team like the Golden State Warriors is something he'll remember forever, and it will be one of his best highlights. And again, he's 14 games into his NBA career. One of the things I've taken note of is how do they close out games, right? Because you look at their conglomerate of talent of Shea, J-Dub, Giddey, Chet. Those are the 4 guys, and Lu Dort. You got to include Lu Dort because he's looked amazing so far. I know a lot of people don't look at him as part of the real core. It's hard for me not to at this point because he's just been so very great at what you pay him to do. You pay him to hit shots. He's doing that. You pay him to play a great defense against opposing best players. He's doing that. And I look at how they close out games. And recently, Kenrich Williams came back from his injury. I think it was his first game against the Spurs. I remember getting the standing ovation or whatever. But over the last couple games, we've seen a lot of Josh Giddey not playing crunch time. And I've been seeing some dialogue about that because one of the major questions about this team, at least for a lot of people come off season, was like, okay, obviously Shea is an all-star talent, all-NBA talent. Josh Giddey is a talented player, but will we see a world where both of them can coexist in the highest level to win an NBA championship? And I always felt that was a little bit unfair because we are talking about a team that is very early in their rebuild. I know because they're 9-4 or 10-4 as this video is dropping, they feel like they're levels ahead as far as their rebuild go. But this is what year number 3. And Josh Giddey is such a young player. It's just too early for me to look at him and Shea and say, they got to trade Josh Giddey because he doesn't necessarily fit. But one thing I'm realizing, though, is that they're not necessarily playing this season for development anymore. They're playing to win basketball games. The development play is say, hey, Josh Giddey, we use a lottery pick on you. We believe in you and whatever. You're going to close out these games. You're going to close out these games regardless, right? That's not what they're doing anymore. Kenrich Williams closing out games. It's like, okay, that is a play for them to win. And I'm not saying that Josh Giddey in that lineup wouldn't make them win or wouldn't help them win, but Coach Mark Dayton was like, hey, we're going to play the 5 in this moment that we believe give us the best opportunity to win. And that's just different than previous years. So this is an early stage of their rebuild, but I'm guessing based on the way they're playing this, they're not looking at this as a development year. They're looking at this as like, we can win right now. And we got to worry about our first round pick. We got 17 in a bank over the next couple of years. So it's just interesting to see the type of lineups that he can pull out. And they haven't been completely healthy this season. And they're playing as good as they can. Shea. Let's talk about Shea because obviously all NBA player last season. I won't say single-handedly, but a lot of people did not really think about the OKC Thunder last year as a team that can make a play-in push, and they did. They made some noise, and a lot of that is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being one of the more dominant guards in all the association. There's not many people in the league that can get to the basket at will like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And in this game against the Golden State Warriors, this is one of the most dominant overtime for individual performances I have ever seen. I don't know if he ended with 10 points, 12 points, 14 points, whatever it was. But in that regulation, he was also doing his thing as well. But it was a lot of Chet, and Chet was doing his thing, and he was letting Chet be him. But when that OT came, and he was like, we want to win this game, it was bucket after bucket, tough bucket, easy lay, foul draw. You're like, man, I recognize the value. I recognize the talent of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but in a moment like that, this is high intensity, high leverage moments. It's like, I got this. And one of the things that's so very interesting about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is that last year when he put up all the crazy stats and made it all NBA, Thinking Basketball has a statistic that has to do with the spacing of the players around you, right? It doesn't account for your shooting, but it counts for the other 4 players on the team that's on the court with you. Last year, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander played with the 32nd percentile with spacing, which is bad. It's below average. Look at the team he played with. It makes sense. He's playing with Josh Giddey. He's playing with this guy. He's playing with this guy who aren't necessarily plus shooters. So Shai was doing all of the things he was doing with negative spacing. This year, he's in the 91st percentile. 91st. And I feel like Shai has been dominant still. But he's also allowing everything around him to go as well. I haven't looked at his usage numbers. I would actually assume that his usage numbers are very similar to last year, but it feels like he is okay with just saying like, oh, it's his night tonight. Like Josh Giddey had the game against, oh man, was that the Spurs game? With Josh Giddey had his night, or this night, Chet had his night. He's cool with just being a decoy at times and letting the others get off. And then when it matters the most, like that OT game, he's like, don't worry, I got us. And that is what like one of the things I look for in a star player. Now, I think what helps this, or what made him have this mindset, is Shai was not always looked at as a star player. If you look at his rookie season with the Clippers, he was more of a role player as a rookie. Or you look at, the 1 year with Chris Paul, he was higher than a role player, but not the star player. So he's been able to play the first couple years of his career, not like some of the dudes that get the keys immediately. He's okay with letting, I guess, Lou Will or Montrezl Harrell do their part, or Chris Paul do his part, or Gallinari do his part, and just let the game come to him. But again, he also has the play style that's like, okay, the game not working for the rest of the foe, I'll put my backpack on. So to see that he has his spacing, I mean, a lot of this has to do with Chet. Again, he's a 7-foot-plus guy that at the moment is shooting 44% from 3. I don't know how much of that is realistic for him to be a 40% three-point shooter, but right now through the first 14 games of his career, he's a 50, 40, 90 guy, which is, again, insane. I don't know if he's going to be that. Actually, I'm just going to assume that he'll regress at least a little bit, but still, the minutes with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chet together have a net rating of a 12.56 with 266 minutes played. Coach Mark Daigneault has them as the number 1 used starting lineup, or number 1 used lineup in the entire association, and they're damn good in it. The starting lineup has a offensive rating of 114.7 and a defensive rating of a 104.8. It's one of the youngest teams in basketball, y'all. It makes no sense how they're able to do this, but this is good coaching, having a star player that's willing to take a back seat or play in the floor of the offense, and just having a lot of people that buy in. One of my favorite things, and I've talked about this many times before, maybe not necessarily on this podcast, is I like to see when you get benched, and I don't mean that in a negative connotation, like, for example, when Kenrich Williams is playing over Josh Giddey come crunch time, I like to look and see how you are performing, how you are reacting to the moments. Right? There was a viral clip of when Alex Caruso can he talk about the Bulls? When Alex Caruso hit a clutch shot in a basketball game with Patrick Williams on the bench, he walked away. Didn't show any emotion whatsoever. This is an OKC team that is okay with cheering for each other. Other than the one moment when Chet did hit that big shot, Josh Giddey just kind of put his hand out and hit him with a high five, but didn't necessarily cheer or anything. Maybe that was just like, okay, it's tie game. We're going into overtime now, so we still got basketball to play. Or it could have been that Kenrich Williams had played the previous 5 minutes. He just got put in to throw a pass. And he's damn good at it. Bro, I know, oh my God, who was it that called him the slob wizard? The sidelight out of bound wizard. Ridiculous nickname. Like one of the biggest AO nicknames in the history of basketball. And it was actually on his Basketball Reference. If you look up Josh Giddey, it's a slob wizard. crazy. But he is one of the best in the game at that sideline out of bounds. He is a slob wizard. So he's put into the game. He throws the pass. It's just crazy stuff. And I ain't even mentioned guys like Isaiah Joe, who ended up hitting 7 for 7 for 3 against the Golden State Warriors on the previous night. Or I ain't mentioned Cason Wallace, who came in and fit like a glove as a rookie, and he's also hella efficient. Like, there are so many playable players and good players on this team, and they're well coached, and Sam Presti's doing it the right way. Everybody was asking, will they buy? Will they buy? Will they buy? I don't think they need to at the moment. Don't buy unless it's the absolute perfect fit. And right now, the guys that might be available are not perfect fits for OKC. They're building the culture. They have a culture, and you don't want to break that up just for 4 extra wins for some of the people that might be available. So I'm just having a lot of fun watching OKC basketball. If you have not tuned in, obviously I advise it. The next team I want to talk about is the team that took home my League Pass award for most watched team. That is the Sacramento Kings. I'm going to say this again on this podcast. I don't know if I've expressed my discomfort with League Pass before, but one thing that they're missing a lot. One thing they're definitely missing is like a Spotify rap thing where it shows you watch this many games of the Sacramento Kings. You were here, you watched live when De'Aaron Fox hit 6 threes in a game. Like, those type of things would just be legendary. I would first recommend them fix the platform before we start adding extra stuff. But like, I'm just saying, if you were to ask extra stuff, that is one thing that I would recommend, because I think you will get more people maybe tuning into League Pass versus the other ways, because you get that moment. Like, personally, I had always been an Apple Music guy. And then I started watching other people's Spotify raps. I'm like, damn, this is kind of cool. And then I canceled my Apple Music and got Spotify, and I ain't look back. I'm actually looking forward to my Spotify rap this year. Like, you would get people to do that. Anyway, Sacramento Kings are 8-4. I don't know if this accounts for their 1 win against the Dallas Mavericks, but let's just say 8-4 at the moment. They are 6-1 when De'Aaron Fox is playing, which matters the most because they did lose a couple games to the Houston Rockets by 1,000,000 points when De'Aaron Fox wasn't there. But for the most part, when De'Aaron Fox has played, they have been virtually unbeatable. Now, this is how crazy early we are in the season. I started writing my script and notes or whatever while watching the Sacramento Kings versus Dallas Mavericks game, and that is a game where the best thing about the Sacramento Kings is how crazy they can get in one moment, right? This game was tied up. Actually, the Dallas Mavericks had a lead at like 77-75, and then 2 minutes later, they were down by 12. Like, that's how crazy the Sacramento Kings offense can get. Anyway, the Sacramento Kings before that game were 16th in offense, 13th in defense, and then after the game, they were 11th offense and 16th in defense. So just one game can have you jump up 5 in offensive rating or drop 3 in defensive rating, and I thought they played a pretty solid defensive game, especially in the second half. Either way, one game could change a lot of things. And I saw some people tweet at me like, yeah, Kenny, the Sacramento Kings offense isn't as dominant as it was last year. Should we be concerned? The answer for me is absolutely not. Because when De'Aaron Fox has been on the floor, which is what you're counting on, they've been amazing. They have been amazing. De'Aaron Fox has been a player that has been one of my favorites since he was drafted, right? And it's so cool to watch his individual progression. And right now, it seems like the next thing he's adding, at least in this 7-game sample size, the 3-point shot looks real. In this game, there was a moment where Luka Doncic hit a 3, and before the camera completely turned around to the Sacramento Kings half court, De'Aaron Fox had already hit 1. He had like 6-7 threes tonight, and confidently. And then it got to the point where he had back-to-back threes. And the Dallas Mavericks like, okay, we can't just give him that shot. And guess what he did? He blew past his defender. If a guy with this speed, and this is what I've been saying about Tyrese Maxey early in the season as well. A guy with this speed and this finishing ability, being able to score at all 3 levels makes him unguardable. And De'Aaron Fox has been a mid-range maestro for the last couple of years. Obviously, clutch player of the year last year, and a lot of the damage that he did do in the clutch was in that mid-range area. We know he's one of the best getting to the basket because of his speed and athleticism and finishing at the rim. But the 3-point shot has always been a question. And now if he's hitting this, there's no way to really game plan for stopping De'Aaron Fox if he has all 3 of these levels in his game. And I'm not even talking about the hub of the offense in Domantas Sabonis, who's just coasting and averaging a smooth 20, 13, and 7 or something like that. Like, he is doing the Domantas Sabonis things that we seen last year, just doing it all over again, being this anchor on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. The defense is the interesting part, though, because last year, they were the best offense almost in the history of basketball, but the defense was pretty bad. Right. And they were okay with that. They were okay with that. They were the 3 seed last year with them being this high powered, you can't guard us. We can't guard you, but you definitely can't guard us. And now let's say they stay at 16th, and I don't know how this is going to go. Let's say they stay at the 16th ranked defense. And again, I'm assuming based on what I've seen over the last couple years of De'Aaron Fox playing, that 11th in offense is going to climb and climb and climb the more reps he gets, right? If they stick at 16, this team is crazy. And I like to see the progression of individual players, right? Keegan Murray, rookie season, set the record for most three-pointers made in the rookie year. And every time I watch a broadcast that's not the Sacramento Kings, so tonight, the Dallas Mavericks, every time he hit a shot, they ain't gonna mention that. Which it's a cool stat. It's a very cool stat. I remember Larry Market had it. You know what I'm saying? Most three-pointer shots made by a rookie. It's gonna continue to be broken like almost every single year just because that's what the NBA is going to right now. But Keegan Murray has changed a little bit. His shot is not falling. That's okay. We're a couple games to the NBA season, 12, 13 games to the NBA season. I think he has a track record that's good enough to let us know that three-point shot will come around, whether it be his sample size in college or sample size in the NBA. I don't believe he's going to be a 28% three-point shooter this year. That's just not who he is as a player. But what I like seeing now is that he has progressed to the point where for the Sacramento Kings now, he is the primary defender. We got Luka tonight. I got it. And of course, a guy like Luka, you're not going to stop him. But I like to see him take these challenges. And I watched a 6-minute video on Twitter, on X, whatever you want to call it, of somebody putting together these clips of the Keegan Murray defensive experience. And one thing I'm still struggling with as a guy that's covering the NBA is how to delegate my time and watching, right? So I've tuned into a ton of Sacramento Kings game early in the season, but it's also in a 4-box, right? So when you're watching in a 4-box, you're missing this here, missing that there. And I hadn't really recognized completely how good of a defender Keegan Murray had looked this year so far. So I watched that 6-minute video and I'm like, man, I've been really missing out. So that was one of my points of watching today versus the Dallas Mavericks. I want to see Keegan because he's going against the Mavs, and the Mavs on the second night of a back-to-back, and you could kind of tell, especially come second half. But to watch Keegan fight over these screens on Luka Doncic and play pretty solid defense, I'm like, okay, this is something I need to put a pin in and come back to next game and the game after that and the game after that, because not only is he accepting that as his role, you can tell that cerebrally, is that a word? You can tell that he's thinking defense a whole nother level. And they need players like that on this roster because that offense is something that we know they pride themselves in, and they got weapons galore. Where Malik Monk can come off the bench and average his smooth 16 points per game and dunk on somebody so nasty that it's the ESPN #1 play of the week. And then one thing we're noticing from Malik Monk a little bit, and part of this is because they were missing De'Aaron Fox earlier in the season and stuff, the playmaking. I kind of forget that Malik Monk is only 25 years old and he's still growing as an NBA player. His playmaking feels like it's on a whole nother level than it was, let's say, a year ago or 2 years ago. And of course, he's always going to be in conversations for 6 men of the year. Today, they were missing Kevin Huerter, and we don't know if Kevin Huerter is going to be out for a game, 2, 5. I never really know what injuries. I'm not a guy that understands the human body that much when it comes to injury. So when they say sprain this, I'm like, oh, is that 2 games? Oh, he's ready for next game? All right, bet. But they had Chris Duarte. Chris Duarte jumps into the starting lineup, didn't miss a beat. He's cutting off ball. He's not doing the same things that Kevin Huerter does as far as dribble handoffs and 2-man game with Domantas Sabonis, but I think he played the role really well sliding to that starting lineup. I know I already mentioned Domantas Sabonis, but part of the Kenny Beecham podcast is going all over the place. You have to accept it. It's just inevitable. I'm gonna talk and I'm gonna go all over the place. One of my favorite things in ball, when we talk about watching a star, a superstar, all-star, whatever level player you really feel like calling people, is the players that are a hub, specifically the bigs. I've watched in my lifetime as an NBA fan, the center position change so very much. We're even, let's say 7 years ago, if you were a negative to not so good defensive center, you wasn't really looked at as a guy that can play or start at the center position. Every single team had a guy that was their defensive anchor. We actually would sacrifice a shit ton of offense for the sake of the defense because the protecting the paint is the #1 thing. And again, it still is. It is still the #1 thing. But we're seeing more and more teams be okay with saying that our center is a negative to average defensive player, but that offense makes up for it. And Domantas Sabonis is that. We see guys like him, now Joel Embiid, who's great on both sides, but him, Joel Embiid, of course, Nikola Jokic, Alperen Sengun. We have a lot of centers in the association that are used as these hubs on the offensive side of the ball. And every single one of them is doing it a little bit differently, right? The dribble handoff game with Domantas Sabonis where he faked the handoff, where he goes straight to the basket. He's just stronger than everybody. That's him. Jokic has his own way. Joel Embiid has his own way. I'll see a double team, and I can now get the skip pass to the corner. I just love to see the center position being played through more and more every single year. And Domantas Sabonis is one of the best in the league at that, where he is one of the better passing bigs in basketball. You would probably say he gets it from his father. I mean, I wasn't around for his father's playing time, but I know what he was capable of, mostly because I played a lot of 2K. Not anymore. I don't play a lot of 2K anymore, but mostly because of 2K. But yeah, just seeing a guy like Domantas Sabonis, who again, I think we call him a bad defender / average defender for the center position. We're okay with that because of the hub he can be. And again, I don't want to rehash last year or anything, but the man played through a broken hand / thumb. I don't remember what it was. It was something like that. And was still really great in that position. And now he's relatively healthy. He doesn't have a big old shoe print on his sternum from Draymond Green anymore. And he's playing great basketball. And when him and De'Aaron Fox are both playing great ball, you're not going to be able to really stop them offensively. So I think a lot of people kind of cover the sport or think about the sport in the terms of, can they win a championship? And if not worth talking about. That's not what we want to do around here. I'm not here to say who's a contender / pretender or anything. I just want y'all to, again, tune into the Sacramento Kings as much as you can, because De'Aaron Fox is a show and Domantas Sabonis is too. Now it's time for my favorite segment of the Kenny Beecham podcast, the Ask KB section. This is where we go into Twitter or X or in the comment section, use the hashtag ASKKB, ask a question, and I try my hardest to answer a few of them per episode. You know, keep this dialogue alive, okay? The first one comes from Set the Line Pod. Is that a gambling podcast? Set the Line, it has to be a gambling podcast. Outside of win-loss record, how do you determine if a rebuild is headed in the right direction? I feel like it can be hard to tell sometimes because a lot of individual success can be partially attributed to empty stats. It's a very good question. And it's a question that I wish it had a set in stone answer to. But if you look across the association and you ask 100 different players, is this team successfully rebuilding? You're going to get different answers for different people. Everybody has their own priority, right? When I think about a team that is rebuilding or whether or not they're doing it in the right way, I'm looking at, okay, year one of the rebuild. The Portland Trailblazers is a perfect example at the moment. This is technically year one of the rebuild. They traded Dame. They did trade Yusuf Nurkic. The longest tenured players on the team are gone. And now they're running out rosters that have an average age of people that cannot drink alcohol. This is year number one. And this is the base, right? This is where you look at the young talent that you have now and Anthony Simons, who's been around for some time, but Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, Scoot Henderson, so on and so forth. And we try to figure out who of this core right now do we think we should be investing in? And this is our baseline. Okay, he did this year. Great. Next year, in order for me to say that, oh, this rebuild is going in the right direction, I need one of the pieces that they've invested in, not to jump into all-stardom, superstardom, but to look better than the previous year. I need them to draft in a good way. And I need to see a team that might have won, again, just saying 17 games. They were awful. Be like, okay, now we're a 22-win team. Again, I know you said besides wins and losses, but that is one of the main things here. How are we drafting? How are we using the assets that we have? Because I think everybody has different philosophies, right? When it comes to rebuild, some people want a bunch of draft capital. Some people want the actual players. Some people want to get fitting pieces around. It's never really like a black or white thing. I'm looking for the young players that are there. How are they progressing? How are you drafting? What are the vibes? Like, are we going to talk about vibes or one of the next teams? But I honestly do believe when I think about rebuilding teams and vibes, it matters. When I think about a young Memphis Grizzly team, and this is like year one Ja Morant, vibes are great. Vibes are great. You know, I think about, let's say, current Washington Wizards. This is year one of their rebuild. This is their base. So I'm not overreacting to it. Vibes not as great. Next year, we should see a step up, right? Detroit Pistons. Hold the Pistons talk. I'm looking at young players' progression. I'm looking at vibes. And that's kind of it. Let me know in the comment section. Always a fluid conversation. What are you looking for as far as how do we could figure out if the rebuild is going the right direction without talking about wins and losses? The next one comes from Neil Sue, who says, do you rather watch a game focusing on something or someone specific, or watch just for vibe? Oh my God, the vibes are coming up like crazy today. For vibes. Just seeing the ball go through the net. Greetings from Brazil. And I'll be honest with you. The Illinois or Chicago public school system, which is where I spent the first 14 years of my life, failed me. Only reason I know that that's Brazil is because I've been playing a little bit of FIFA over the last year or two. That's the only way I know flags at this point. And I don't remember getting taught flags at all. It was stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. That was the only flag I knew. I knew the Canada flag because in Mexico, because it's North America. But as far as anything over the pond, I didn't know until I start opening up packs in FIFA. All right. Do you rather watch a game focusing on something or someone specific? That's how I have to watch things now, because this has become a full-time gig, right? Whether it be this podcast or my other channels, watching with an analytical mindset is the only way I can really do it. We're even, again, referring to last night, we had Friendsgiving. The Bulls were in a close game against the Miami Heat, a game where they started off down 22-1. They won it. Everybody's watching and everybody's on their toes as DeMar DeRozan's hitting shots or whatever. I'm trying to figure out who's guarding who. Are they switching? Who are they hedging? Just like I'm trying to do those type of things instead of just watching the game. And I feel like 90% of the people in that room were just watching the game, you know? So it's become a blessing and the curse, because obviously because of the way I watch the games, I've been given this platform where y'all watching and listening to me talk about games. But it also, I'm not saying taking the fun out of it, because I still really enjoy my job. But like, I remember when I was younger, talk about like let's say early college, my first year of college, before I was like really in tuned. It was like strictly off vibes. It was strictly off vibes. Kyrie Irving was on the Boston Celtics. You feel me? He was saucing. I ain't think about dribble handoffs. I ain't think about defensive ratings or lineups that were being incorporated. I was like, man, Kyrie Irving can hoop his ass off. I don't care about nothing else. And I still kind of think that, but I also have to think a little bit more about it, because this is going to sound terrible, man, but it's a fact. Every second of basketball that I consume, I'm thinking about it in terms of content. So what is happening on this play that might be something to talk about? 99% of the time, it's nothing. But when that 1% hits, it's like we got to do something, right? For example, Lonnie Walker got the dunk on the Philadelphia 76ers, right? I knew that dunk was going to go viral. I knew it was a crazy dunk. It was 5 76ers around him. But I was watching live, so I picked up the phone. I got to get a picture, get it up on Twitter. It's terrible. It's terrible, but that's part of the job that I've signed up for. It's been a very long time since I've been able to just watch basketball strictly on the vibes. And I'm okay with that. I enjoy my job. I really do. You see me like think about it. I looked off to the side. You're like, oh man, Katie, I don't know if Katie really believed that. But I'm usually focusing on something or something specifically. So let me try to think of another example of this. Some other games that happened today. Today I was curious on like just the very start of this game. Who was going to guard Jason Tatum? And against the Memphis Grizzlies, who was going to guard Jason Tatum? Like that was something I was curious about. And later on in the game, it was like John Conchar is guarding Jason Tatum. He doesn't stand a chance. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if they won. The game is still going on as I'm recording this. I don't know who wins. I'm going to assume the Celtics won, but I don't know. But yeah, I'm always watching, thinking of something specific, taking notes, whatever. That has been Ask KB. Remember, in the comment section, hit me up on X/Twitter with the hashtag AskKB if you want to see your question be asked or answered. You know what I mean. We got 2 more teams to talk about today. A small market, or is this a medium-sized market? Hold on. It's a medium-sized market. Minnesota Timberwolves are 9-3, currently sitting at the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. We talk about vibes, again, for the 7th time in this episode, the vibe rating on the Minnesota team. Maybe this is something we should add to the show. When we talk about a team, what is the vibe rating? Right now for the Timberwolves, it is a 9.6. And the only reason it's not a 10, because them boys that helped Rudy Gobert when he was getting his ass choked out. It's a 9.6. Everything else is so great. And there are a lot of things that is contributing to their success so far. There are a lot of things contributing to their success. Continuity is one of the most important things. Through the first 12 games of the year, Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert have played about 260 minutes together. Last year, the entire year, of course, Karl Anthony Towns missed a ton of the season. They played a little bit over 500 minutes together. So just through the first 12 games of the season, they've doubled the amount of minutes they played all of last year. So I'm looking at what they're doing right now. I'm like, okay, every single game, they're starting to recognize how to play off of each other. Now, we talked a couple weeks ago about the Minnesota Timberwolves and how they were winning games and everything. They were on that, 7-game win streak or whatever it may have been. We were talking about how the net rating of Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert was like at 8 or 9. It was crazy high. Right now, it's sitting around 3.5. Still great. When you look at last year being a negative, like you take all of that. One of the things that I was asked actually at the Friendsgiving, because not all of my friends are deeply into basketball, but they are aware enough. I was asked, what's going on with the Timberwolves? Like, why, they know the people, they know Anthony Edwards, they know Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, and they know what happened last year. Like, okay, what's different? There's a lot of things we can contribute to their success so far. One of the things is the different style of play from the guard position, the point guard specifically, right? A lot of last year, it was D'Angelo Russell. And D'Angelo Russell just did not fit the type of guard they necessarily needed. They needed a connector. They needed the version of D'Angelo Russell that he's trying to get to now. When D'Angelo Russell go into a pregame or preseason interview, he say, I want to be Derek White. Like, that's the type of player they needed last year. They didn't have it. And instead, they flipped D'Angelo Russell to Mike Conley, who was older and, maybe a little bit worse at the time. I don't know how you rank players, but you could argue that you might have downgraded as far as overall talent goes for fit. And Mike Conley, when he was playing, looks good. And now you're kind of seeing that. The first X amount of games throughout the season, he had 1 turnover in hella minutes. And then he had 4 turnovers after that stat went viral on Twitter. But he is a maestro with protecting the ball. And he just has a way of, I don't know who's the leader in the locker room, whatever. But in between timeouts, when the moment when they're walking to the huddles and stuff, I see a lot of Mike Conley talking and all of those type of things. And D'Angelo Russell was one of those dudes that I guess we kind of look at D'Angelo Russell as a offense first, scoring first kind of guard. I know he's kind of transitioned to a bunch of different parts in his career, from All-Star in Brooklyn to now, and with the Lakers, I don't really know what to call him, but he's just different than what Mike Conley was bringing to the table. And another thing that I was kind of thinking when I was answering this question of what's going on with the Minnesota Timberwolves, just thinking real big picture. The Timberwolves at this moment in time have 3 All-Star caliber talents. Those guys are Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, Cat, I see you, my boy, we're going to get to it, and Rudy Gobert, whether you like it or not. He might be DPOY. 3 All-Star caliber players. And then they have 2 all-defensive caliber players, and I'm counting that Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert. So I'm looking across the association. What other teams have that? Well, they have 3 All-Star-ish players. Again, everything is a roller coaster. Karl Anthony Towns started off terrible last 5 games. He's looked amazing. He might go back to the tier. I don't know. How many other teams across your association have 3 All-Star caliber players and simultaneously have 2 all-defensive players? It's not many. And the comment section is fluid, of course. There's only 2 other ones, in my opinion. The Boston Celtics have that, with Derek White and Drew Holiday being the defensive guys, and All-Stars, you pick them. You can pick 3 random players on the team. They might be All-Star qualifications. And then the Milwaukee Bucks, who have, wait a minute. I don't know. The Bucks don't fit anymore. Don't got 3 All-Star caliber players. Do we count Chris? I don't know if we counted Chris. He's still on the minutes restriction and stuff. Nah, for the sake of the conversation, let's add them. The defensive guys, of course, Giannis and Brook Lopez, and the All-Stars would be Dame. I can't get myself. It's been over a year. I can't get myself. All right, so let's just say that the Minnesota Timberwolves are in the elite class of 2. Them and the Cavaliers, or the Celtics. The Cavaliers were a team I thought about, though. The Cavaliers were a team I did think about. On the all-defensive side being, again, these are just all-defensive caliber players, not saying that they're going to make the team, but Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. And then you could say that Darius Garland, who started off struggling, but has had a couple good games back-to-back now. Donovan Mitchell, and let's say Mob. But even, do you think E-Mob is in conversations for All-Star this year? Probably not. So I'm just saying there's not a lot of teams that fit 3 All-Star talents and 2 all-defensive players. So it kind of makes sense. You need people that can score. You need people that can stop you from scoring. They kind of got a recipe for that. Again, I know a lot of people look at things in its entirety. Can they contend? Can they not contend? Can they a championship team? I don't really care about that at the moment. I'm enjoying what we're watching for Minnesota basketball. An interesting stat. A couple interesting stats that I picked up. Their offensive rating versus top 10 defensive teams is only 22nd. Now, it's a small sample size. They have not played against a lot of teams that have top 10 defenses right now, but just something to think about for the foreseeable future, right? Will they be able to score against really good defenses? Because the offense thing is the thing that's not struggling, but it's like league average. The defense is stellar, right? The defense is the thing they hang their hats on, but the offense for the most part has been, let's say, average. And against top 10 defenses, they haven't been great. But the silver lining to that is their defense versus top 10 offenses is third. They've been amazing. They've been amazing in stopping. I mean, you saw that against the Boston Celtics that one game. They've been amazing in clamping up some of the best offensive teams in basketball. So it's like, it's like this team is a defensive-minded team, and the offense is starting to crank up because Karl Anthony Towns over the last 5 games has been as, like, you remember, everybody's going to talk about this, right? Well, Karl Anthony Towns was, the GM survey, they asked if you were able to build your team around any player in your association. Karl Anthony Towns got the number 1 votes back in, 2018? Something like that. It wasn't too long ago. Nobody gave him a vote right now. But the last 5 games, that offensive juggernaut that we had seen for the first half of his career, the first part of his career, looks there again. And in this game versus the Pelicans, they were down by double-digit points going into the fourth quarter. And I watched Karl Anthony Towns take over a game, and not just in his scoring. And that is eye-opening. That is eye-opening. Because the score was there, for sure. But we saw him, okay, first play out of the fourth quarter, they're down by, I think, 12 points to the Pelicans. The Pelicans are not playing Zion Williamson. I don't know if that's important to say, but I'm just going to say it for the sake of the people at home. And the start of the fourth quarter, they start off in a zone, with a little 2-3 zone action. Okay, let's divvy it up a little bit. Karl Anthony Towns gets to the middle of the paint. Boom, gets the ball. He reacts to the point where the center, who is Jonas Valanciunas, has to make a decision. Do I guard Rudy Gobert? Do I guard Karl Anthony Towns? Karl Anthony Towns hits the corner that is wide open. Mike Conley, just because he's so much of a threat right there. The fake to the shot, the fake to the alley-oop made the corner guy come in. Mike Conley, boom. Very next play down. Same thing. He gets to the middle. And now the defense is overcompensating, and Jonas Valanciunas comes up too much, and he throws a lob to Rudy Gobert. I'm like, whoa, things are looking different. And then late in this game, this had to be a minute left, minute and a half, 2 minutes left. He gets a one more pass, and Karl Anthony Towns has the opportunity to take the shot to tie the game. And what did he do? He one-moored it to the best player on the team, Anthony Edwards. And Anthony Edwards hit the shot. I'm like, whoa. Whoa, Cat. We know that you can score. But if you're starting to do this more on this team, dangerous. Dangerous. Yo, big shoe. Like, I don't know what size Karl Anthony Towns well, but I feel the man wears a 22. Every time he's doing something, the shoes just the first thing I'm looking at, because it just looked too crazy. But I saw him take over that game. And I have to talk about his defensive buy-in, because one of the reasons why Tim Connolly made that trade, we made the trade to bring in Rudy Gobert for all of the draft capital, was because they did not believe in Karl Anthony Towns as a defensive center. And we had a 6-year sample size to say, hey, when Karl Anthony Towns is the anchor of our defense, we're not going to get rebounds. And they're better rebounding this year than last year, but it's still not amazing. We're not going to get rebounds. Our paint defense is going to be Swiss cheese. So we're going to trade for one of the most impactful center defensive players in the league, right? And now he's buying into the defensive side. When he is playing center by himself with Naz Reid, they do the double big thing most of the time. The defense is still good. And it's not great, but it's still good. And I'm watching the individual buy-in from Karl Anthony Towns. Now, it's not flawless, you know what I'm saying? But it's better than what we saw last year when he was coming off all the injuries. Like, you remember, he missed pretty much the entire offseason and then got injured again in November. Last year was just an odd year for Karl Anthony Towns. So I'm happy to see him have a full offseason where he played FIBA ball, looked pretty good. To have this short start of the season where he was struggling, for him to really, really get back into it is just great. And Anthony Edwards is a stud. I don't think I need to say that, but I want to get my flowers as much as I can. The connecting piece of Kyle Anderson is still so beautiful. For this team to have a guy like him that can basically a Swiss Army knife on this roster, where he plays a lot of different roles depending on the circumstances, is great. Nickeil Alexander-Walker as a role player has stepped up a good amount. And I was buying Nickeil Alexander stock because of FIBA. And he obviously not the version of him that he's playing for Team Canada, but he is playing great basketball for them. And this, again, the vibes are a 9.6. And only if they would have helped that man Rudy Gobert, this could have been a 10 out of 10 on the vibrator. Just got a notification that I'm missing a double overtime game between the Suns and the Utah Jazz. So that's fun. That's fine. I'm gonna always miss something live. That's fine. I'll go back, rewatch it, whatever. The last thing I want to talk about is one of the worst watches in all the association. I think you can argue, and it's not the worst watch. It's not the worst watch, but it's the bottom two. The worst watch for me, just my personal opinion, is the Washington Wizards. And the Detroit Pistons are 29th in the association on my watchability scale. Oh my God, this team is terrible to watch, man. I need y'all to internalize how tough it is to be on an 11-game losing streak in the middle of November. We're not even a month into the season, and they are on a double-digit losing streak. They are 2-12, and it's bad. And I feel for Pistons fans, because I'm going to read y'all something. Pistons fans, I know you know this all too well, but for the rest of the consumers out there, they had a 17-win year last year, a 23-win year the year before that, then 20, then they were 500. They were 500 the year before that, then 39, then 37. They have not been an above 500 team since 2015, 2016. Hello? Do you know what happened that year? That is the year of the 3-1 comeback in the finals. I had just graduated high school. I am 27 now. Like, that is since 2008. That 2015-2016 season is the only year they've had of above 500 since 2008. What was going on in 2008? Hell, I don't know. I do not know. That's how long ago it's been. And now, again, we're talking about a rebuild of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th year of the rebuild, and there has not been progression. I've been seeing a lot of discourse, specifically about Cade Cunningham. And here's where I land on the Cade Cunningham. Is he good? Is he not? Spectrum. I land in the I don't know. It is impossible for me to watch this team play and figure out whether or not Cade Cunningham as a player is worth building your franchise around. Because remember, this is the first overall pick you talk about. This is a guy that when you get the first overall pick, your mindset is this is the savior of our city. This is the savior of our organization. And they have not put Cade in a position where he can play his best ball. Now, he's not getting away from the criticism. I'm not saying that I can't criticize the man, but when you have a team with negative spacing like he's playing with, how can you expect him to be a positive player? How can we expect to dissect his game when he has no shooters? They looked at Cade Cunningham, and I remember specifically on draft night, they were like, Cade Cunningham is like a smaller Luka Doncic. And they meant like, they didn't mean in height, they mean like in weight. It was just crazy. Where he could be the engine of your offense and he could get downhill, get to his spots and just create whatever. He has never, ever played a game with positive spacing in his life. So yes, it makes sense when you see the stats of who's taking the most difficult shots in the association, and Cade Cunningham is top 5. It makes sense because when you watch this team play, as I tried to do today, they gave 140 plus points to the Raptors, who haven't been able to score for the majority of this season. Let me see what that did to their offensive rating, because the Raptors are now 22nd. I promise you they won 22nd before tonight. You let them score 144 points. But when I was watching, before I decided this is getting too much for me, this man Cade saw 3 bodies most of the time. And he had to decide to take step-back three-point jump shots, and his three-point shot is not the thing that he's great at, because it's hard to get to your spots when the other team is not guarding your teammates. It's hard to get to the basket when you're seeing multiple people all the time. Trey Weaver, I praised him. Asar Thompson looks amazing as a defensive talent, amazing as a prospect. I'm not doubting that. Marcus Sasser looks amazing as a late first-round pick. But somehow, as much as I've praised him over the years for their drafting, with Jalen Duren, who's been out, but still, and of course, Cade Cunningham being the end-all, be-all number 1 pick, they haven't been able to put it together. And they've taken shots. They've taken swings. They're 4-30-something since they traded Sadiq Bey. I know that's a stat that went viral and stuff, but it's a tough watch. And I look at a guy like Cade Cunningham, who, again, maybe the front office doesn't know. Maybe they don't. But if you believe in Cade Cunningham to be your guy, the guy you're building your franchise around, the guy that you want to take you to the promised land eventually, you have to build a team around him that fits his strengths and maybe cover up his weaknesses. Kind of seeing that in real time, the Dallas Mavericks. They put a bunch of shooters around Luka. They put some defensive-oriented wings around him. It ain't looking perfect, but the blueprint is there, right? You look at some of the other young star players around the association, where their team has dedicated their time to them. Like even Trae Young, who's having a bad shooting year. You look at the roster they built around him. They built that for Trae. Oh man, we don't have a stopper in the guard position. DeJounte Murray made an all-defensive team, the youngest all-defensive player of all time. We're going to trade 3 first-round picks for him. Trae Young needs a lob threat. We're going to get Clint Capella, and we also going to draft another lob threat for the second unit. Oh, he needs shooters. Sadiq Bey is out here for nothing. Bet we'll go get Sadiq Bey. He's having a down year at the moment, but we believe in him as a three-point shooter. Like even though, again, it's been success here, not success here, you can't say that the team around Trae Young is hindering his success, right? Who are some other teams? The Suns have done an amazing job. Well, they also just brought in Kevin Durant, so maybe that's a bad example. The OKC Thunder have done an amazing job of building around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right? We talk about them having negative spacing. Now they added some pieces where the spacing is one of the best in the league. Like we could go on and on and on. The Sacramento Kings, and I'm not saying this is the perfect trade because I still think there are some things wrong with the trade. But they had to make a decision between Tyrese Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox. They picked De'Aaron and said, hey, we're going to trade this guy who might be a future all-NBA player for a guy that fits him more. And Domantas Sabonis, we're going to make our first postseason appearance in 20 years. And then the Indiana Pacers get Tyrese Halliburton. They say, hey, you like to run? You like to shoot? Bet. We got that for you. Cade Cunningham is a first overall pick that hasn't been given the luxury of that. You know? Oh, Kenny, he's got to play to say that he earned a team being built around him. Touche. How about, okay, let's say we're not building around him. Can we build a team that can hit a jump shot? Forget about Cade Cunningham at this point. No, forget about Cade Cunningham. Can we have any shooters? One? Bro, Kevin Knox ended up on this team, and he's been like the saving grace. Kevin Knox. It's bad, bro. It's bad. And Monty comes into this as the highest paid coach in NBA history at the moment. Shout out to Mike Malone. He also got his bag. And I was so excited for Monty Williams to go there because they've been missing culture. They've been missing great coaching. And again, I'm not grading Monty Williams and his experience over 14 games of his NBA career here in Dallas or in Detroit. But he immediately said, hey, we need to build a defensive identity. We're going to start Cade Cunningham with Killian Hayes. We know Killian, even though he's had his moments here and there, is one of the worst offensive guards in basketball that are getting starter minutes. Can't even argue that. The numbers say it. But hey, they want to build a defensive identity. Okay, bet. Are we ever gonna like put Cade out there with a bunch of shooters? Monty Williams said in a pregame interview or a postgame interview after a loss, said, hey, okay, we gonna get some good shooting around Cade today. Kevin Knox inserted into the lineup. Oof. You know what I mean? And then one thing that was surprising to me, not this game against the Raptors. It was the game previously, and forgive me, I don't have it in the notes. The game they played right before playing against the Toronto Raptors. Ausar Thompson played 2 minutes in the second half. 2 minutes. And it wasn't because they were like, oh, we in this game, we want to set the rook. They weren't. It's bad, man. It's bad. And I feel for Pistons fans because, again, I look at Jalen Duren, Ausar Thompson, Cade Cunningham, hell, even Jaden Ivey, and I say they have some fun, good pieces around them, but not being able to win a basketball game or lose or giving. Now, this game ended up being close, but they were down by 40. Like, it's not good, man. It's not good. And I don't know the answer to it. You don't throw gasoline on something like this. You don't say go trade for the Zach LaVine ones that's in my mentions. You don't trade for Zach LaVine right now because y'all suck. He gonna improve the spacing or whatever, but what are you gonna win? 4 more games than you thought? I don't know what the direction is. But the Pistons got to figure it out. They got to figure out how to turn the curb on this rebuild. All right. That was longer than we really want the Kenny Beecham podcast episodes to be, but I had a lot to talk about a bunch of different teams. Let me know what you think about the smaller market wrap up. A lot of teams obviously could make it. You got plenty of episodes. Speaking of that, I don't know if I mentioned at the top of the show, we will not be dropping this Thursday because it is Thanksgiving. And I know a lot of people are traveling and so on and so forth. I am in that group and I will not be around to give y'all an episode. So we will be back at this same time next week for another episode of Kenny Beecham Podcast. Leave 5 stars, leave a like. If you got to this point, you had to enjoy something, I would assume. So leave a like, and I will see y'all in a week.